Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I hope you and your loved ones are safe and well. My name is Vidhi Bedi, and I lead digital initiatives for Martech Vibe, Middle East's first and only Martech news publication with an active readership of 25,000 marketers across the Middle East and Africa. On behalf of my team, I want to welcome you all to another Martech Mandate, a bi-monthly online briefing where we address trending topics in the world of Martech and AdTech with regional experts. I want to begin today's session by thanking Netcore for supporting our vision of empowering marketers in the region and building a savvy community of Martech professionals. In today's session, we will be discussing case studies, strategies, and solving problems with personalization in marketing. A significant number of customers expect personalization from the brands that they engage with and prefer that they are sent customized communication and are treated as individuals. When done right, personalization can increase visitor engagement by 55%, improve customer experience by 55%, and increase customer acquisition by 46%. To gain a broader understanding of the overall situation and how marketers scale their personalization strategies, we have with us today a very inspiring panel that will discuss strategies marketers can build to 10 times marketing ROI growth. Before we start the session, I would like to highlight some house rules. Please ask all the questions in the Q&A section. The last 10 minutes of the session will be allocated for questions from the panel. If you are a solution provider, please refrain from promoting your brand in the chat section. Without further ado, I would like to introduce the panel moderator for this session, Steve Locke. As the former global head of Martech at The Economist, Steve led a storied content brand into a new era of growth and recognition with transformative tech ops strategy. His team has received numerous awards for the enablement of smart use of data in acquisition and engagement. Steve offers insights on how the confluence of tech, data, and content is monetized now and will develop into our future. Before I hand over the session to Steve, I want to thank him for his commitment. He is joining us from New York right now, where it's just 6:30 in the morning. Steve is one of the best Martech experts out there, and if you're looking for someone to advise you on your next Martech project, he's the one to go to. My team will share his email and LinkedIn profile in the chat section with you. Thank you for joining us, Steve. It's always a pleasure to have you with us. Over to you now.
Thank you so much. It is really such a pleasure to be able to do this, not just for myself, but for the community as well, especially in these times. So I really have the pleasure of introducing our two panelists today, who really come from a broad diversity of backgrounds in our business world that we're talking about. So first, please welcome Hamad Malik, who is the CMO at Stars Play, and has the coolest background also that we should all be jealous of, because it gets to work in entertainment and media. And I'll have him introduce some of himself in a minute. And then we also have Avadut Ravankar, who is the Chief Growth Hacker and Product Evangelist at Netcore. And we're both, kind of jealous of that. Maybe it's just me who's very jealous of this, cool background. But Hamad, if you could please just give us a couple of minutes on, sort of who you are in a nutshell before we kind of jump into it, that'd be great.
Sure. Yeah, Steve. The first thing first, I'll now have to ship this background off to you to New York. Probably you can use it next time.
I will send you my address.
So yeah, listen, thank you so much, Vidhi. Thank you, Steve, for putting this together. Really happy to be part of this. I've been in the region, in MENA region, all my life. I've always worked in this region. I've had roles which were global roles or regional roles, but always based in MENA. I headed a launch of LG when it was not LG as a brand. Some of you, if you are old enough to remember, it used to be Gold Star. And by saying this, probably I'm giving my age away. But yeah, it was Gold Star. It switched its brand to LG, and as it was entering the market, I structured the market entry strategy. I moved from there into media industry. For some of the people who might be here from MENA, they would know OSN and then beIN Sports. These are two big pay TV companies in the region. So I headed their marketing function. And then a couple of years back, joined a startup called Stars Play, which is number one streaming service now in the region, ahead of the global giants. And I, again, manage the marketing function over here. But here in e-commerce companies, as you would know, marketing means growth as well. So yes, marketing and growth. Very happy to be part of this panel.
Well, we're glad to have you here, and thank you. And I wondered if you could also give us a little snapshot of who you are before I start to grill you.
Sure. Thanks, Steve, and thanks, Ahmad, for kind of joining us. Quick background about me. I've been with Netcore for about 10 years, have been helping brands set up their entire MarTech stack, be it their automation platform or their personalization engine, or any other piece in the entire MarTech stack. That's essentially what I focus on. I drive growth for Netcore, which essentially is part of product, part of marketing, and work along with sales to make sure we help brands derive the right ROI from some of these MarTech investments. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Great, and we'll talk about that. That kind of bridge between them. So, guys, let's just jump right in. We are talking about personalization today, and we are getting the details of what works and what doesn't. So, Hamad, I have the first question for you, and so I think you're not a recent CMO. You have been a CMO for a long time and a head of marketing. So you must have seen across multiple global media companies, you must have seen it all. So the first kind of question is really, what is the right way to approach personalization for you?
Yeah, listen, like most of the marketing areas and challenges, I would say there is no cookie cutter sort of like an approach to anything. I think depending upon who you are, who your customers are, what industry you are in, you have to define and sort of like refine your own formula of success. But there are four things that I would like to sort of like list as things that you should consider. I wouldn't term it as the right way or wrong way. There is no right or wrong way as such. But these are the four things that I have that I consider as being very important. So the first thing is, when you are talking about personalization, I think another very important word is contextualization. You have to be able to understand who your customers are, what are they looking for, and how do you want to position your product with them. If you don't do it in a manner where it is contextualized for them, you'll lose it. So, it might sound a little bit of a vague idea, but just let me give you an example. So we are an e-commerce company, and we are, streaming is our business, but streaming companies basically acquire their customers, online, right? So we are an e-com company, I would say. For e-com companies, basically retargeting is a very important tool in your marketing arsenal. But for us, for instance, it never worked very well. Our CPT cost per trial was very high. Our CPA cost of acquisition was very high in retargeting. So we wondered, why is it that for other e-com companies, this is a very, very potent tool, but for us, it doesn't work. And then we realized that, if you are a normal fashion e-com company, for instance, and if somebody came and browsed your, selection or SKUs of purses, yes, if someone is looking for Louis Vuitton, yes, you can put Prada in front of them or something like that. But for us, it was a little bit complicated. If someone is looking for an action movie, they could be interested specifically in The Rock, one artist. And if you show them another action movie, they might not be interested in that, right? So what I'm trying to say is that, you have to drill deeper in understanding, how to create the right context before you start on your journey of personalization. The second thing that I want to emphasize is that, like most of marketing initiatives that you roll out, testing is very, very important. So how do you test your personalized content versus the content that is not personalized? Do your A/B testing, see what are the results like, whether you really see an uplift once you have personalized your initiative or not, or your materials or not. So this is very, very important. Doing A/B testing is super important. Monitoring result is the third thing. Once you do those tests, obviously keep an eye upfront. You should have some KPIs of what do you want to see out of this drill of personalization, and have some KPIs upfront. Once you have done everything, you have rolled it out, you should see how does it gauge against your KPIs, etc. And then from there, obviously, again, like most of the marketeers do, you should make it, or try to make it, a repeatable exercise. So you have to know what is it that worked, what is it that didn't work, how do I do it again, how do I roll it out to different areas, and what are the key learnings and lessons. So for me, I think this is the order, and these are the four things that I feel are important as we embark on the journey of personalization.
Yeah. Steve, you're on mute.
And I think that we can all agree that that is absolutely, these are things that have to be in place. So my question to you is, what is the wrong way to do personalization?
So I think I agree to what Hamad said. There is no wrong way to it in terms of doing personalization. In fact, maybe not doing it is possibly wrong, is how I would put it. And and I'll just add to what Hamad mentioned. I think he had 3 or 4 very clear points he mentioned. The way anyone should approach personalization really, and that's one place where we think people go wrong or brands go wrong, is basically utilizing all data touch points that the customer really gives you, and making sure that you're using it while you're personalizing the experience for the brands, for the users, sorry. And what I mean by that is a very simple example, right? And I'm sure some of us do say Netflix is one of the best when it comes to some of these things. But when I go to Netflix, there is this series called as The Suits, which it kind of showcases to me, and it's possibly now done that almost 15-20 times I've launched the app. It actually has shown me that right on top. I'm just saying it's very simple, right? I've not clicked on it for 20 times. I've seen it. You might as well just stop showing it to me. And right. That's basically a very simple example of what a brand could possibly do, where the customer is actually leaving you this data, giving you that signal that I as a user have seen something and I've not clicked. And you as a brand need to now listen to that signal and take an action by not showing it to him again. So I think utilizing data points, and there are many such data points, like users spending idle time on the app on a particular screen, the amount of time they actually spend on an app or on a website, a lot of signals which users leave while they're kind of browsing on the app or website. But brands don't kind of take that into consideration while personalizing. And I think that is essentially where things go a little wrong. That would be the core to personalization, which is data, and trust me, with interactions that we've had with different brands, getting that data unified and getting it in the right form has been the biggest challenge, and I think every organization, even before whatever their decision is, right? They want to do things in-house or they want to get someone external. No one can really do any magic for you till the time you solve your own data problem. And you get that data layer right, and I think other things are pretty simple. I think there are technologies available for it.
I think that's a lot of talking about how we move from data to insights.
Correct.
Right.
Right.
What is in between the lines, right? We have, earlier when we were chatting, we talked about the fact that today the problem is not that we don't have data, right? The problem is there's too much.
Yeah.
So how do you determine what is important and what isn't? But it's really kind of, it's one of those things that really has just kind of bothered me as a developer, and a technologist, is how we talk about AI, in marketing these days. But to me, it's not really an actual artificial intelligence, but it's algorithms and automation on top of the data that we have, because we're trying to pull insights out of it in some regular way, right? Because we've so much now that humans can't really, do this themselves anymore. So a question for Hamad then. I mean, you've got to work with and at scale in media. There's no option about it, right? To do it manually. So is there an example that you could speak to at Stars Play on how personalization is really the core of that user experience? How do you compete with somebody like a Netflix and the amount of investment in time and resources they have into personalization?
Sure. So listen, I mean, for us, to tell you the truth, our whole DNA is all about building our business around customer needs, right? So we are a startup in MENA, right? I mean, and Netflix is obviously a global giant within our industry. But when we started off, there were a few things that we did quite well. I mean, streaming services are all about content, and while there is a lot of hype around original content, the fact is that most of the viewership, 80-90% of the viewership, comes on the content that is sourced from different studios. Now, the traditional approach has been that you go into the market, you strike something which is called in our industry output deals, that you sign a deal with a specific studio, that whatever they produce, whatever they generate, you just get that. So we moved away from that approach, and we started looking at certain data points from within this region around what is it that the customers want. So for instance, we looked at search queries. I mean, how many people are searching for a specific piece of content, and that to a degree was, I mean, a steer for us also on what to acquire. So the content that we acquired was around what people wanted in this region. Then, I mean, to give you another example, when we looked at this region, the penetration of credit card in this region is really, really low. I mean, if you go out of UAE, in Saudi, penetration of credit card is 20 to 25%. If you go to Egypt, the penetration is as low as 5%. You go to North Africa, the penetration is 1 or 2%. In a region like this, if you came out as a product and as a brand that said that if you want to subscribe to us, then you have to have a credit card, then you'll not fly. Business will not fly. So what we started doing was we started connecting with the telco operators in the region and offering an opportunity to people to subscribe through the telco operators. And that transformed our business. So, I mean, what I'm trying to say is that, I mean, personalization and is not just a concept for marketeers. I mean, you can build your business, you can build your market shares, you can build your commercial success based on your focus on subscribers and customers, and personalizing the whole experience of your product around, your prospects or your customers. And as a result, I mean, even though we are a much smaller organization in Middle East and Africa region, MENA region, our market share is we have for the last 3 years, we have held on to our #1 market share, both financial, both from, from a financial perspective, as well as from a number of subscribers perspective. So for us, I mean, how do we tackle it? We tackle it by thinking of personalization and having a personalized experience in each and every part of our product, in each and every part of our business. Because we don't feel that that is something that is limited to marketing or one or two other functions. It is something that has to be at the core of your organization if you really want to succeed in today's time and age.
Yeah, I mean, that makes so much sense, right? You sound like you have something to say.
Yeah, so just to add to that, and I think Hamad made a brilliant point there, where I think one of the crucial aspects specifically for OTT platforms is how do you make sure you increase your day zero retention? Because that's essentially when he's consuming, some free content, trying to understand if you're really worth paying for that subscription or not. And I think Hamad made a good point around analyzing or studying some of these searches that happen from each region, I'm very sure people in Abu Dhabi against people in Dubai would have very different preferences and tastes, and knowing that and making sure that when a new user launches the app from Abu Dhabi, he sees very different content on his homepage on the first screen compared to the one who launches an app in Dubai, sees very different content as per their tastes and preferences is a must do for all brands, because that day zero experience basically turns things around. And if he gets retained in the first 7 days, generally it is said that he'll get retained with you for more than 3 months or 6 months.
Yeah. So would you say?
Sorry if I could add, Steve. I would 100% agree, Davi. What I would say is that personalization in your experience even starts before you come onto the platform, right? Because in our case, our product is very dynamic. So I mean, we could show, for instance, an action movie to a guy who doesn't love action. And if we show an ad, I mean, upfront with all the action themed movies, that would be a turn off for that person, because what he is looking for is probably more of a family content. So even understanding people before they come onto our platform and customizing an experience and proposing the side of the product that will most appeal to them is critical now, right? Because their experience of landing on our homepage or landing page might not even start if they don't see something upfront that they can relate to in principle.
So then, could we actually talk about some of this more, because this I think is quite an interesting area on how things are quite different in the Middle East and North Africa region. Hamad, we have a much more diverse customer base than the West, right? And personalization, sure, when it comes to entertainment and action movies and a favorite actor or not, these things are important. But we also have to think about customers in the region personally with sensitivity as to regional differences, right? And so how do you look at that and make sure that you do that? Because as you're saying, there is a pre-onboarding piece, right? So some of these, like, we talk about day zero, it's sort of like even -1, right? When they come in, how do we make sure that they don't see something that would completely turn them off to your brand? Because I think this is very important.
Sure. And that is where two things are super critical. I mean, first thing is that having a very, very robust and clear segmentation strategy is critical for your success. If you don't have a proper segmentation, if you don't understand who is who, what do they watch, how do they watch it, which devices do they watch it on, what is it that they are looking for, what are their personal circumstances, is it a young techie guy who's on his first job versus what we call an established sort of like slightly conservative family, which is looking for family safe content, which is looking for, content that their kids can watch. So understanding that, knowing their economic value, like economic value in the sense of those segments, is super important. It helps you target the right segments, right people efficiently. Because the other thing for us, and this is another very important part when you talk about personalization, customization, and and segmentation, is that for a huge organization, they would have huge amount of resources as well. But for us, us StarsPlay being a startup, we have to also see how do we deploy resources against each campaign, against each segment, etc. And that is critical for us from a success perspective as well. So understanding economic value of segments is very important, so that you can target the right segments and get the maximum bang out of your bucks.
How do you guys do some of that segmentation?
Sorry?
How do you do some of that segmentation on your platforms, people, teams?
Sure. So the segmentation has to be, multi-tiered and multi-attribute or multiple attribute, segmentation. So you can do it for a company like us. What we can do is also look at all the trends and all the data points that we have for our customer who is on our platform. And that could be one steer on which segments there are, and who comes to us, from where do they come to us, which campaigns resonate with them, which content resonated with them, and things like that. That is one thing. But then if you were to only do that, then it will create a bias of looking at who you have been able to acquire, and there might be a bigger segment, or there might be a different segment that somehow you have done something wrong in your marketing or go to market, and you have not been able to acquire them. So for that, you have to do a proper segmentation exercise based on proper segmentation techniques, and then understand who those segments are. So for us, again, it is both based on the data and the subscribers that we have, and we segment them, and also segment the whole market. And see what are the right segments for us to target.
But I'm looking at you because I asked you earlier how can you do personalization wrong? So a challenge to you is do you agree with what this looks like?
Sorry, Steve, I didn't get the last part. Maybe you broke.
Sorry, just do you agree or just disagree with the things that you need to be, how you approach it to make sure you're doing the right thing.
Right, correct. So and just to maybe add on to again what Hamad mentioned about the whole segmentation piece on what he was talking about. I think one of the ways in which you can segment customers and acquire the right customers is by making sure that you are doing campaigns on lookalikes of your loyal customers, using Facebook or Instagram custom audience and things like that, which essentially allows you to make sure that you're acquiring the right set of customers, and then the ads, like Hamad said, are the relevant ones shown to them basis what your loyal customers are already liking. And that's essentially how you reduce your CAC at least by about 10 to 12%, by making sure you're showing the right, in case of OTT, it could be right movie content. In case of e-commerce, it could be the right products, but that essentially reduces your CAC. And for that, you'll have to run campaigns of smaller buckets, like there is a lookalike campaign which you run to 100,000 users, but at the same time you can run, let's say, 20 campaigns to buckets of 5,000 each, and each 5,000 bucket sees a different ad which is personalized for them basis what their loyal customers on your platform like. And that's essentially one of the new hacks we've kind of seen, which can help you reduce CAC substantially and get the right customers on board, because you don't want the long tail to come on board, who just consumes free content or browses the site and does not purchase anything, and you still pay for that click. You want the right ones who will essentially stay longer with you, have a higher customer lifetime value.
Yeah. You brought up one of the magic words I was waiting for, which was, a hack, a growth hack. And, this is part of your, title. This is the main part of, where you are. Do you think that you can, talk to us just, well, what is growth hacking actually to you? Because we love to use the term. I'd love to hear from you on, what you think that looks like and, what you've been able to do, especially, from an agency perspective, with a very, very broad range of clients who have their own customers. What does that look like for you, right? What are some of those interesting things you have been able to do?
Yeah, so just to kind of start with, it's a fancy word, nothing else. But what it truly is basically is a more experimentative mindset. Where you're constantly doing experiments inside your product and in your marketing campaigns to get to the final objective, which is either increasing revenue or increasing retention. Those are two key things in any business that you would run today. So that's essentially what growth hacking is all about. And if you ask me, we've recently done that for with so many brands that we work with, for one of the e-commerce brands called Qtro, which kind of sells organic products. We recently did a bunch of experiments with them, where we personalized the homepage for new users with recommendations, and made sure that any new user landing on the homepage does not see a generic page, but sees a personalized landing page basis location. If he comes from an Android device, he sees different products. If he comes from a MacBook, he sees different products, which led to almost 8 to 10% reduction in bounce rate. And at the same time, we extended that to also creating a personalized landing page on the website for every individual user, which is again basis their browsing behavior, basis their purchase patterns. There was one landing page created for every individual user using machine learning, which led to another 5-7% uplift in their overall conversions. And those were two experiments which really kind of did wonders for us in terms of increasing conversions on the website. And this was for e-commerce. And same applies for an OTT platform as well, where you can have like a personalized playlist for a user. And I see Hamad is kind of unmuted, so I'll hand it over to him.
No, spot on. So this is 100%. I mean, so in our case, for instance, I mean, this is such a good comment that you have made, because in our case, for instance, if a customer has or a prospect has clicked on a banner or a video which was showing, I mean, friends, and if they come on the platform, if they see friends, I mean, on the landing page, I mean, it reassures them that yes, this is what I am signing up for. This is what I like. This is the reason why I'm here. This is the reason why I'm going to spend money with these guys. If they clicked on something which was friends, and I mean, they come on the landing page, and landing page shows them, for instance, something entirely different, there is a possibility that some percentage of people might get a little bit confused, and it might delay their action, or it might, I mean, sort of like put them off. I mean, so yeah, you are so right that, I mean, it is these small details that are so very important when it comes to personalization.
So, I mean, that's a point for me, because I get annoyed, and it still happens today. If I get an email, I get a sales email, I get a marketing email, and it says, "Dear Jessica," it's if you can't even get my name right for some reason, maybe you shouldn't try, right? So it kind of leads me to that kind of that other question inside. Obviously, the data is super, 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 super important, right? And there's a lot of discussion around first-party data, third-party data, how this stuff is changing. Obviously, we've got lots of regulations, changing the landscape. Lots of questions around, do we have enough data? Do we have enough data? How do we make sure we have the right stuff? So if we're trying to layer on MarTech, and we are trying to layer on AI, and we are trying to layer on all of these things so that we can get to these individual digital experiences, right, for individual people. I'm really interested to ask you about what your data and data strategy actually looks like. And I expect it to be quite different in terms of, what you're looking at. So Hamad, at Stars Play, is it just first party data now?
Yeah, I mean, I think, see, I mean, one of the things that I always say is that the way marketing has transformed over the years. When I started off as a marketeer in 1993, 94, you had to do surveys, and you had to train your frontline staff to collect customer feedback and things like that. Now, when I look at the amount of data we have, being an e-com company or a streaming company, it's really mind-boggling. There are so many data points from where you can extract data. There are so many actions that subscribers take on your platform, and you can measure each and every action, and you can see what they are doing, how they are doing. I don't want to sound like the big brother, but I mean, there is a lot of data that you can gather and you can have, and you can utilize that to craft a customer experience that is amazing, actually. So the thing is that, I mean, if you can just sort of like comprehend everything that you have, make sense of that, I mean, put it all together properly, then that in itself, and extract insights, to your point, when you were talking earlier, extract insights from there, that in itself is a huge achievement. And really, there is a lot of actionable data. There is a lot of actionable data, at least for organizations like ourselves. I mean, if there are organizations which are still primarily brick and mortar organizations, then it's slightly different, but still with the tools available today, and probably you and we can talk a lot more about that compared to what I can. But I mean, there are tools available even to the brick and mortar companies also that you can deploy and implement that will give you access to a lot of data. So to tell you the truth, you as an organization have a lot of rich data now that you can take actions on, even if you were talking purely about first party data.
What if, for some of our attendees who still have, issues with having enough data, right? Or having clean data, enough that you can actually really throw it into automation, which is a very, very important part of this, right? Is the data hygiene. So, Avrid, let me ask you, working with a lot of brands, also, have you worked with anyone where you've been able to see, where things work, where maybe you have a little bit more of a blank slate, right, between first-party data, third-party data, or offline data as well, coming from retail, coming from physical kind of presences, what's kind of, worked for you there?
Yeah, so I second Hamad to a great extent, where he mentioned there is enough data you already have which you're not actioning on, and I think if you do that, that itself will get you leaps and bounds ahead than wherever you are today. We strictly stick to first party data. We don't kind of delve so much into third party data, and returns from third party data are diminishing with the Chrome regulation, the change that they've brought, the iOS 14 changes that are coming in terms of privacy of users. So I think they are diminishing, and over a period, I think, we should see that, being used lesser and lesser as time passes. You mentioned about offline. I think that's something which we are big on. And I think, brands with specifically COVID, have realized that a lot of offline brands have realized online presence is important, and because they have a heavy offline presence, they are now trying to make sure experiences at both these stores that they have are kind of similar, and they don't treat the same user differently when he comes at a store as compared to when he comes online. And which is where I think we've worked with quite a few brands, like Sun and Sand Sports from Dubai itself is one of them, where I think they've stitched that entire data very well with offline store presence and online presence. And today, even if you go and transact at their store, you would end up getting a thank you email for purchasing. At the same time, you'll also get recommendations to do the next purchase online. So you are essentially getting treated as one single user, by stitching that online and offline journey together. And I think that's clearly the need, and to a great extent, customer data platforms are trying to solve that problem. By stitching and creating that unified view of a customer, irrespective wherever he interacts with you.
So you think that it'll be something that's even more important as the fact that, I mentioned briefly about regulations earlier, which obviously are changing the volume of data that we get from our users, the behavioral data, that we get from our users, and consumers obviously, right, are much more aware, of these things. I think and they may not be able to talk about CDPs yet.
Yeah.
But if you'd mentioned a cookie to people, 5 years ago, so, they would probably go to the oven and start baking some for you. But so today, when you have that kind of regulation, doesn't it make other sources of data even more important? What do you think that looks like? Have you had brands that you work with that have that kind of physical or offline piece, trying to onboard this data? I think it's quite an interesting area because it's difficult, right? In my experience, it's been very difficult to get offline to online onboarding, and then to contextualize that, to use an important point that Hamad brought up of, what does that actually mean, right? What does that store visit look like? What does that purchase of something off of a shelf in a store mean for that particular user if you can connect them?
Right. Absolutely. And I think today that's become the need of the hour, because and you're right. You shouldn't get too goofy with things that you send across to your customers, surprising them with the fact that you actually know some things about the user, which he does not know that and that's essentially where the user could feel a little kind of not good about it. Like, there were times where Google Maps
Creepy factor.
Yeah, right. Creepy factor to it, right? Google Maps would, you exited a restaurant and Google Maps would ask you to do a review. That is creepy.
I hate this.
Yeah, that's a little creepy generally. So you don't do that. I think if you don't become creepy and personalize, I think users want that. They genuinely want that. That's today a big missing element. Because even today, when I talk to a lot of brands, what I hear is, if I send more, I will get more revenues. And that motto is still not kind of going away. And it takes some time, but I'm guessing we are getting there.
So let me pull some of that together, right? Just on your point, because Hamad brought up some of this too. We've got one of our attendees, Manohar, who's asked a question as a consumer. There's, we constantly talk about this, or I talk about it as, that banner ad that has the pair of red shoes that you were looking at that you already bought 5 months ago, and it's still at you. We're talking about remarketing, super important, to do. Lookalikes, super important to do, right? Act-alike, super important to do. But why do we still have this? I mean, we were having this conversation probably 5 years ago, and people were already annoyed, by it. So why are we still like this? I mean, I'm going to ask you, Hamad, because when we're talking about, and it's something that Avidud actually brought up, which is, getting a suggestion for a show to watch, 20 times, and you still don't want to watch it for some reason, and you're doing something else. Where are we already? Because that's kind of a shortcoming inside of personalization, isn't it? So how do we get better at that?
Yeah. Yeah, I think, I mean, let's give ourselves some credit as well. I mean, over the last 5 years, I mean, that the way things have progressed, I think I mean, maybe I am a bit biased because I'm a marketeer, but I think, I mean, there has been so much progress in marketing as a function that it is amazing, right? So, if I look at my own career, if I see what I used to do 25 years back, I mean, probably 90% of those things are redundant now. I don't even look at those. So I think, I mean, this is an evolving science. To answer you, Steve, I mean, this is an evolving science. So, I mean, for instance, I gave you our own example, right? When you look at retargeting, for instance, somebody clicked on a certain banner which had an action movie. Now, it is very difficult to gauge that that person was looking for that or clicked on that particular banner because he or she liked a specific actor or a specific actress or a specific producer or the genre of action, right? Now, it's tough to determine that, and that is why I mentioned that when we used to do retargeting, it was a bit different because if someone is browsing banners or clicking on banners for shoes, ladies' shoes, I mean, okay, you understand. I mean, the person is looking at ladies' shoes or I mean, purses or something like that. For us, it was super complicated. So I might have been guilty of serving. I mean, thinking that okay, so this person loves action, and serving banner after banner, I mean, on action movies, whereas the person doesn't actually like action. There was just one time that there was a specific actress that that person liked, which happened to be in one action movie that she has ever done through her 20 years career in Hollywood, right?
Yes.
So what I'm trying to say is that, I mean, it's a complicated science. And while it is our responsibility to think deeper, to deploy our technology properly, to look at everything more closely, the chances of sometimes going wrong with it are still there, right? So that would be my defense, learning from my own experience. By no means does it mean that, I mean, they should be serving or anybody should be serving suits to, I mean, to Avi. If he has seen that, sort of like watched a trailer probably for that piece of title, and then decided not to watch it, right? So that bit is slightly simple. I wouldn't say slightly simple, but I guess yes, a brand of a global company's magnitude should pick that cue up. But I mean, then there are other bits which are, I would say, a little bit complicated. But the technology is evolving, right? I mean, for instance, when I started off my career, I wouldn't have a lot of conversations with people like you, Steve, or with people like Avi, right? I mean, the MarTech as such did not exist. You relied on search companies and all of that. Now, for any CMO, any CEO, any chief commercial officer, the MarTech guys are their new best friends. I mean, the MarTech guys don't take me out for lunch. I mean, I take them out for lunch, right? So I spend the money buying dinners and, I mean, drinks, etc. So that shows that, I mean, how having the right technology suite, I mean, having right technology, MarTech folks within your team, having the right partners is such a critical thing, because it is a science which is evolving at a very, very different pace.
Yes, it is. It is. Thank you. And it makes me think about the I'm focusing a question on you, of it's obviously difficult to do this at scale, right? And so we will have some of these pitfalls, that are limitations of technology. I think that's probably the most broad way to say some of this stuff. So I would like, there's some questions I'd love you to actually respond to, Hamad, on that piece. At the same time, it'd be great if you could just kind of mention, as we're thinking about scale and stuff like that, is there a kind of a ceiling that we should respect in terms of trying to get too personal, right? Because we do have all this stuff at our fingertips, and we do want to try to personalize more and more. But is there a kind of a wall or a ceiling, or a kind of limit we should be looking at?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we spoke a little bit about this before as well. Not getting into data points which the user is not aware that you're tracking. I've heard of some platforms, and we absolutely don't preach any of that. But the fact that we've heard of some platforms where if if you install that app, they also track other apps on that device.
No good.
So that's not something which the user would appreciate, and I'm sure none of us on the call would like that happening. I've heard of things where there are apps who actually when they're on your phone, they're actually tracking things that you're doing in terms of the conversations that are happening with the device around, which is again to make sure it's personalized. So if I'm talking about I want to lose my weight, I possibly would get a call from a gym tomorrow, and that's because I was having a conversation around it, and that's very creepy. So not getting into things without consent, that's a very clear thing, when it comes to personalization, and that's your ceiling, right? Whatever you do, the user should know that you're actually tracking things about him, and I think that should be the ceiling to it.
I think
yeah.
No, please go ahead.
Just to kind of also, address what, Manohar asked about, I think to a great extent, that problem is now solved, with a lot of brands where earlier you would see many of these ads. Now you would see, few of them. And
Sure.
those few ads would still continue. And that's possibly, there are some solutions which are getting there where generally if you do things cross device, right? So if you visit let's say StarPlay's website, or let's say an e-commerce website as an anonymous user on your desktop, and day after tomorrow you download the app and register and sign up and buy a subscription on the desktop browser, you will get retargeted. The brand no ways kind of knows that it's the same user. And that's where that small caveat kind of still remains, of cross device knowing an anonymous user is not a very easily crackable kind of thing yet. And that's where 10% of the ads, like today, even to me, Netflix on Instagram keeps targeting ads to me saying that buy a subscription, right? That's because, they don't know my identity on Instagram. While I already have a subscription. So I think some of that will remain, and it's good that it remains. I am happy that Netflix does not know me on Instagram. That's how I'm happy as
Not yet.
And I think that's possibly something we should live with.
Great. And we've just got a few minutes left. So just really looking at the end of things. Hamad, do you have anything to kind of help close this out with? We've talked about a lot of things today.
Sure. So I think there is one very interesting question that somebody has put in, saying that while there are a lot of media organizations that have everything available to them, and they don't, they are not the ones which are at the forefront of streaming. And why do we see a lot of OTT platforms coming from? Why don't we see a lot of OTT platforms coming from media organizations? So, listen, I think, in today's time and age, and with the success that some of the global OTT brands are having, I think everybody is going towards that direction. Disney has announced, and they have actually launched Disney Plus. Peacock is coming from a media organization. There are so many brands coming from the media organizations. I think they were a little bit late to sort of like jump on this opportunity, and that is because of the fact that their business models were very different. If you are a big media organization that distributes your merchandise and your movies and your series through theatrical releases, then pay TV, then free to air, etc. And then, gets millions of dollars of big checks from all of these windows, then it is difficult for you to establish an OTT company and then enter each and every unique market all over the world, and then do local marketing, build your own infrastructure, hire people, run a business, run a P&L. It was probably much easier for them to partner up with local players, and then take a check from those organizations. But what has happened now is, with the success of Netflix and certain other brands, they can see that, okay, these brands have an infrastructure and access to the market, but actually they are serving our content, and then at the end of the day, people are consuming content. So yes, we might as well start our own service. But jury is still out. You see, Disney can probably do it because of their breadth of content. They have ABC content, they have great family content, they have huge movies and big franchises. But can a lot of media companies replicate that? Probably it's a question that only time can answer. So
Right.
I think it's a very broad and very big question. I think, I have probably given you some steer as to why some of these organizations have not been able to do it. But happy to talk more about that, at some other time.
I think that's a good, so wrapping up. I've heard from both of you guys that you'd be happy to take up any questions or follow-ups from anyone, who've got more questions. But we are at the end of our time, and there's Vidhi. Vidhi, please close us out. Oh, you're muted. Or at least I can't hear you. Still can't hear you.
Yeah, I can't hear you, buddy. Just maybe I think till Vidhi kind of gets.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Technology. Anyway, so thank you so much for being a part of this webinar. I'm sorry to cut you short. It has been an interesting conversation. Thank you for demystifying the various aspects of personalization for everyone who attended the webinar. Yes, if there are any questions that still needs to be answered, we will take it up in a form of an interview with the respective panelists and publish it on our website. Special thanks to Steve, Avi, and Hamad. Thank you for taking out time and being a part of this session today. Thank you, delegates, for joining us, and we'll keep you tuned about our next webinar. Have a nice day, everyone. Take care.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks so much, Kat. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Talk to you soon. Bye.